When I started working on climate change almost 10 years ago, the hardest thing to learn about wasn't the science, it was how we talk about the science. You see, I learned about all the ways we're disrupting our planet, our home, and the urgent need to act. And then I looked at the press or at politics, and all I saw was this deafening silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I remember once, a couple of years ago, a reporter got in touch to talk to me about my YouTube channel. She asked, "Don't you ever find it hard to come up with ideas for new videos?" No. Why do you ask? Well, haven't we said everything we need to say about climate change already? Thankfully, this has all started to change. The volume of our conversation and our protests around climate change has been dialed up hugely in recent years. And we've seen politicians responding, prioritising climate action in their agendas. As I've said before, I never in a million years would have expected Joe Biden to be such a champion on climate change. Joe Biden's climate policy platform is, to use the American phrase, kind of legit. And I've noticed this change personally too. Being a climate scientist used to make me the downer of every party. Now I'm one of the coolest people there. I mean, I'm not going to any parties right now because of the pandemic, and I guess I wasn't going to too many parties before either. But look, my point is that if I was ever invited to a party, I bet I would be one of the coolest people there. But for something that affects everything, it's wild that we're not talking about climate change all the time. And talking about it is one of the most important things we can do. If we can spread climate science far and wide, that could make all the difference.
No, it won't.
Oh, hi Jocelyn. This is Jocelyn Longdon, a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, who's using artificial intelligence to help tackle the climate emergency. She's also the founder of Climate in Colour, an online education platform and community for the climate curious, making conversations about climate change more accessible and diverse.
Hi.
But let me get this straight. You don't think talking about climate change matters?
Of course I do.
Well, in that case, why are we disagreeing exactly?
Because the way we talk about climate change matters. That includes who we give platforms to talk about it and how it is spoken about.
Okay.
Often we talk about climate change in abstract and scientific ways. This can make climate change seem like some future issue that isn't in any way connected to our current daily lives. Considering that many people around the world, and disproportionately those who are part of vulnerable communities, are experiencing the effects of climate change now, just going on cold statistics is like...
Oh my god, someone help! I was just mugged and they took everything, except obviously for my impeccable fashion sense. And did you know that mugging is getting more significant year on year? Okay, sure, but you know, mugging is affecting real people. Yes, that is correct. And did you know that statistically it's projected to affect double the number of people as soon as 2050? Yeah, but what about me? Don't worry, these projections take full account of your mugging, though of course a single data point is hardly statistically significant. So you're saying that if we talk about climate change in a more human way, that will help get otherwise disinterested audiences more engaged?
For sure, but we also have a skewed idea about who is and isn't interested in saving the planet.
Yeah, I guess that organisations like Fridays for Future or Extinction Rebellion show that people really do care about climate change.
And it may shock you that these weren't the first environmentalists.
I am shocked.
The mainstream news and media mainly prioritise the stories of white environmentalists, which creates this illusion that people of colour don't care as much. A recent survey in the US showed that Hispanic and African American citizens were 50% more likely to join a climate community than their white counterparts.
Wow, that is not at all what I would have expected. But why isn't that reflected in the history of environmentalism?
Because we don't accurately communicate that history. The modern environmental movements are actually successors to a long line of action led by Black, Indigenous and people of colour who were forced into action due to the direct threat to their lives.
Perhaps you could illustrate your point with a concrete example.
Yes, I could. A key moment in the history of environmental justice was the 1982 Warren County protests. This was led by a predominantly Black community in retaliation to their exposure to a new toxic waste facility, something very common even till this day in Black communities in the US.
I guess this is similar to the Ogoni indigenous people of Nigeria taking on Shell. Shell has been exploiting an oil field on the Niger Delta since 1958. Shell polluted land, water and air to such an extent that it threatened Ogoni people's lives. A few months ago, The Hague finally decided that Shell Nigeria was liable for damages caused by pipeline leaks.
And there are countless other examples.
Okay, so it's not just about having a louder conversation, it's also about having a more human conversation that actually reflects the people affected by climate change, as well as the people who are fighting to stop it. But how can we actually reshape that conversation?
Reshaping the conversation depends on deepening the conversation. We need to engage in deep reflection and deep listening.
Okay, but what do deep reflection and deep listening actually mean in practice?
Deep reflection means taking the time out to reflect on how you are working against the values that you say you believe in. Deep listening means giving space to voices that are often ignored and silenced. Switching up your reading list to include not just a diverse range of authors, but a diverse range of viewpoints, formats and styles, including adding climate fiction to your reading list.
Quick confession, when it comes to climate change books, I do actually read loads more climate fiction than climate faction.
It also means actively listening to groups of people that are not in the mainstream and whose voices are usually left out of the conversation. Academics and news reporters are not the only authorities on the climate crisis. Everything's virtual now, so this is a great time to start doing that.
And I would personally say that subscribing to Jocelyn's Climate in Colour newsletter is an excellent place to start.
You can find it at climateincolour.substack.com, and colour is spelled the British way.
Understanding and talking about climate change is fundamental to our ability to act to fight it, but it can only be the start. Because when we talk about climate change, it's our opportunity not just to understand the science, but also the human consequences of it. After all, climate change affects all of us.
So we have to talk about it in ways that reflect us all too.
Thanks a lot for watching, and a huge thank you to Jocelyn Longdon for featuring in today's episode. Make sure you subscribe to her newsletter, Climate in Colour, and there are also plenty of links in the description for even more reading. Okay, until next time.
Bye.